Hey, everybody. It is Trags, Mike Petralia, back with season number 2 of the Jungle Roar podcast. It is my honor and pleasure to be joined by Jay Morrison of The Athletic. You can follow his great work covering the Bengals and the NFL on Twitter at Jay Morrison, ATH, all one word. Are you recouped, as I am, Jay, from both the Super Bowl and the NFL Combine?
I'm not sure I will ever be recouped after that quick turnaround. That was something. And I do not do the combine the way I used to. I do not do the late nights at Prime staking out coaches and scouts. The Bengals
The
are
good
very
old
good
days.
about the Bengals are really good about getting us the people we need, and you can kind of get them on your own too if you need to. So it was a long week, but it was not a week of 3 a.m. bedtimes and 8 a.m. wake ups, thankfully.
Yeah, that's good. Let's jump right into it. Monday was a busy day for the Bengals. We'll get to who they acquired in just a second, but I think I want to touch on your story about one of the key players from 2021 that they lost, tight end CJ Uzomah, signing a 3-year deal with the New York Jets for $24 million. Obviously, that comes out to $8 million average per season. Were you surprised he left and that the Bengals weren't able to keep him on board?
Yeah, really, I was. I wouldn't say it was totally stunning because you kind of saw the winds of change at work when all those tight ends started getting tagged and then other ones started getting re-signed. It's like, uh-oh, this tight end market's getting a little crazy.
Yep.
This could affect things. But yeah, I mean, the Bengals wanted to keep him back. They tried to keep him back, but everybody talks about the hometown discount, how much he loves Joe Burrow. I mean, ultimately, money speaks louder than anything. And the point I made with Paul Dehner on our podcast last night is fans tend to look at these guys and see their career arc and then gone and forgotten. That's not how life works. And these guys need to look out for themselves after football's over. And in that regard, what a great move for CJ to go to New York. Everybody around here knows what his personality is like. You get him on the big stage. I don't know if he wants to have a career in media after he's done playing, but he's certainly going to have the opportunity to do it. And what better place to kind of groom yourself and really set yourself up for life. Not that 3 years, 24 million doesn't set you up for life, but the announcers are making more money than the players these days. This is a huge opportunity for him. And I know everyone in Cincinnati is going to miss him, but I'm really happy for him. I think it's a great move for him, and it's a tough one for the Bengals.
It is, but I thought you did a great job on your piece this morning, Jay, pointing out that his path out of Cincinnati, as you wrote, began to take shape last week when tight ends accounted for 3 of the 8 franchise tags that were handed out. The Browns, David Njoku, Dolphins, Mike Gesicki, and Cowboys, Dalton Schultz, were each tagged for $10.9 million. Of course, that's the figure for the tag figure set by the NFL for free agent tight ends. So in 2021, only 2 teams had more money than that tied up among their tight ends. And I thought, really did a good job, Jay, of pointing out that sometimes deals like these are set by the market. And it was kind of hilarious when you wrote, there's probably a PowerPoint presentation in the works right now listing all of the reasons playing for the Jets is a bad idea, as the Bengals try to pull out all the stops before his departure becomes official at 4 p.m. Wednesday with the start of the league's new year. But he's gone, right? I mean, there's no way that CJ would have second thoughts and back out of this. I guess it does happen, but
yeah, I never say never, but I mean, when the big guys, the national guys, start tweeting it means it's coming straight from their agents, and the agents don't haphazardly throw those numbers out. It feels like it is a done deal. The only way it's not a done deal, I would think, is if the Bengals top it. They're not topping that contract. I mean, they love CJ, but
Right.
this is not an offense that is dependent on a tight end, and theirs is a very deep tight end class. And as I wrote about in that piece, there's a lot of really interesting options out there.
Let's get to that. Rob Gronkowski, Gerald Everett, Robert Tanyan, Tyler Conklin. OJ Howard is my personal favorite. I think, of those five players, I think Gronk is a pipe dream at this point because obviously Tom Brady came back, announced it on Sunday night in the middle of the freaking March Madness selection show. That was another brilliant move by Tom. But the first time, I guess, in the AFC Championship, the Saturday before the AFC Championship, you can't really blame him, blame his, maybe blame TB12 Enterprises. But this time he decides to announce his return. And once Brady announced his return, I think Gronk was off the table. Certainly, Ryan Jensen, the center that the Bengals had their eyes on, he was off the table. He comes back to Tampa Bay. But let's get, if Gronk does not happen, okay, and Gronk turns 33 in May, the guy that sticks out to me is OJ Howard. And as you wrote, he's maybe the most puzzling guy on the list. He was a first-round pick out of Alabama in 2017, but he's mostly been a non-factor the last 2 years due to injuries. And his role was reduced behind Cameron Brate in Tampa Bay. What do you think of OJ Howard in Cincinnati?
I like it. I loved him coming out of Alabama. I remember watching him in the national championship game. He dominated in that game. I was like, man, this guy is going to be something on the NFL level. And I don't know well enough what went down in Tampa Bay, because he did. He came out of the gate hot. He had 11 touchdowns his first 2 years. It looked like he was on the come. And then Cameron Brate kind of emerges. His role reduces. He gets hurt. He doesn't have a long injury history, so that almost kind of works in his favor, that he's, the fresher legs and the less wear and tear type of thing. I think he's a guy that you're not necessarily going to see his value swell because of what's going on in the market. I think he could be a Thursday, Friday, one of those second, third wave guys you could really get at a bargain with a huge upside. And all of these guys, take a risk on any of these guys. I mentioned Jared Cook too. He's going to be 35, but his numbers are just so consistent throughout his career. And you look at it's not a top heavy tight end draft, but it's really deep. And you can take a chance on one of these guys, whether it be a chance due to age, a chance due to unfulfilled projections, whatever it is, and still get a tight end in the second, third, fourth round, and let the veteran kind of groom that guy and bring that guy along. And again, you don't need a Rob Gronkowski type in this offense. You just need as sad as it sounds to say, just a capable pass catcher. And you've got Jamar Chase and Tyler Boyd and Joe Mixon and T. Higgins, all these guys taking all the focus of the defense. You get a tight end in there that can run up the seam and catch the ball, and they can have a solid year.
Well, here's the other thing I think they should take into account. How good of a run blocker is the tight end that they choose to get for CJ Uzomah? Because I think they've got to be better in the run game. They've got to be better in 1 or 2 yard situations when the situation dictates it. We saw it throughout the regular season. We sure as hell saw it in the Super Bowl 5 times. They needed to get a yard, couldn't do it. I think they need to get a tight end who can really be an impact in blocking. That's why ideally, if Gronk were to come back for 1 year, he'd be a great fit in that regard. He's still a great run blocker, but I think they need to focus on a tight end who can not only catch the ball, but run block as well.
Yeah, I mean, Drew Sample is a good blocking tight end, but you tip your hand there. If you have the pass catcher and then you have the blocker, you're kind of telling the defense what's coming, as opposed to you have a Gronk guy that can do both. And that does really kind of open up your options. And Drew Sample is entering the final year of his contract. I don't think we're going to see him here in 2023 and beyond. So yeah, if you can get a guy that can do both and sign him, even if it's a 1 year deal or a 2 year deal, and then bring in a rookie who can do both capably, preferably the blocking is going to be a big part of it, because Mitchell Wilcox isn't going to give you much in the blocking game. Thad Moss isn't going to give you much in the blocking game. They do need succession plans for both a pass catcher and a blocking tight end.
All right, let's get on to the subject that a lot of Bengal fans were obsessed with, and some of us in the media, and I'm one of them, the need to improve the offensive line. The two numbers we've heard ad nauseum since the Super Bowl 56 loss to the Rams, 51 and 70, 51 sacks of Joe Burrow in the regular season, 70 overall, including the playoffs. And to address that, the Bengals didn't really hide their hand at all on Monday. They went out and signed two free agent offensive linemen, guard Alex Kappa, who is a fifth year offensive lineman, will be in his fifth year, coming out of Humboldt State, a Division II program. He's a people mover. He's drastically improved his play in the pass protection in the last couple of years, playing for Tom Brady. Will do that. And then there's Ted Karras, somebody I know pretty well from my latter days in New England. Very versatile guy in the middle of the offensive line, interior offensive lineman. You broke down with your tweet last night how many snaps he's had at center and how many he had at the guard position. I appreciated you doing that, Jay. But Ted Karras, I think, is a wise pickup. He played for offensive line guru Dante Scarnecchia under Bill Belichick and the Patriots. He's very well schooled, and I like both of these picks, but for different reasons. I think Karras is going to be more of a leader along the offensive line. He could certainly play center, although I don't know if he will. See what happens. But I like Karras, that signing at $6 million a year over 3 years, and Kappa 4 years, $40 million. What did you think of the two signings?
I thought they were great. They addressed their biggest need without overspending. They got
Correct.
both of those guys at what we expected the market value would be, and they structured the contracts the way the Bengals structure the contracts, with more money up front. They're clearing room for the big Joe Burrow drop coming next year, and you also give yourself an out if either of these guys kind of fall off after they cross 30. The third year of Karras's deal, they would only eat $1 million in dead money, and I think it's $2 million for Kappa if they cut him on the final year of his deal. So it's a very team friendly contract, and I love the Karras signing, because Duke talked about this at the combine about how when you pick at 31, all your options are open. Now you've got a guy that can play center or guard. That should, if Tyler Linderbaum falls to 31, the way some are kind of projecting now, then you go get him and you put Karras at guard. And if not, then Karras can play center, and you draft a guard, maybe not at 31, or maybe you do at 31. But it really, his versatility and his experience. I asked Duke about this. I think I asked Duke and Zach about this, that now that they've been on a postseason run and they've got guys, everybody in this locker room has postseason winning experience, is that as important in this free agency period as it has been in the past, where they were really trying to build a culture?
Great question.
And it's not as important, they said, but they're not going to turn it down. And I got to thinking about it as like, if there's one area where it is still important, it's the offensive line. You've got Hakeem Adeniji, you've got Jackson Carman, you got Deontay Smith, Trey Hill, all these young guys. You don't really have anyone on that. Outside of this year's run, you don't have anybody on that offensive line that has experienced success and has kind of that veteran presence that a Kappa and a Karras has. So I think beyond what they do on the field is going to be a big help. What they can do in the locker room and in practice, and kind of helping these young guys emerge and really develop. I mean, a lot of that's on Frank Pollock and the two assistant offensive line coaches, but a lot of that comes down to these veterans too. And I think that's another reason that makes these guys both great signings.
What about Bernhard Raymond out of Central Michigan? A lot of mocks have him going to the Bengals at 31. Here's my question. The reason I'm asking this is, would you trust putting a rookie start him at right tackle? Would you do that?
I guess I would say in Frank I trust because it's gonna if they draft a rookie with the idea of him possibly winning that job, it's gonna be a hell of a competition in
Hmm.
OTAs and in training camp. And it's, you know, none of those guys have stepped up yet, but they are confident that Deontay Smith is going to take the next step. And if the rookie wins the job, I feel like he's going to win it outright. It's not going to be a by default kind of thing where the lesser of all the evils, where we have to throw this guy out there. And you might see that too, where if they can't land a veteran tackle, bringing back a Riley Reef or trading for Lyle Collins or one of those type of deals where maybe they get a guy later in, you know, there's always those street guys out there, and you can maybe get someone in there to kind of help groom the rookie right tackle. I wouldn't be totally comfortable with it, but I don't think it's a nightmare plan either, because it's you've got a solid enough line, you've got enough options that if someone wins that job, they will deserve it.
Okay, what about re-signing BJ Hill, which I like, and losing Larry Ogunjobi? The Bengals, I think, obviously, you know, just looking at this on the surface, they were not going to pay what the Chicago Bears gave Ogunjobi. There's no way they were going to pay, you know, 3 years, $40.5 million. I think 26.5 guaranteed. Bengals weren't going to do that, so they go 3 years and 30 million on BJ Hill. BJ Hill's a year younger, I believe, than Larry O. And, you know, for what BJ Hill showed since the Billy Price trade that brought him here from the Giants in training camp at the end of training camp last year, like the deal.
Yeah, I do too. And he's got less wear and tear on it. He was in a split role with the Giants. He only played 40%, like a low 40s, I think 42% of the snaps this year for the Bengals. Um, you you wonder what he can do as a starter with who's getting the lion's share of the snaps at that position. And you put him next to a DJ Reader and a Sam Hubbard and a Trey Hendrickson, and that's a very formidable defensive line. I think he's in store for a possible big year. And I really wish, it'd be great to know how those negotiations came down, because were they in that range with BJ Hill all along, or did they kind of gamble and said, let's wait and see what happens with Larry? And then once Larry was gone, they said, we have to get BJ Hill and we're going to overpay. Cause I do think I'm surprised he got as much as he did, but it wasn't way above like Larry Ogunjobi's contract. I didn't think he was going to get that much, and good for that guy.
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
coming in last year and betting on himself with a 1-year prove it deal and proving it. Yeah, you have to be happy for Larry Ogunjobi. There's no way, I don't want to say no way, but it was a super long shot that they were going to be able to keep both guys. And I think if you look at the numbers, and Paul Daner, my partner on the beat, did a good job of it, breaking it down. And the one glaring difference between those guys, they're very similar in everything except missed tackles. Larry Ogunjobi had a ton of missed tackles last year. BJ Hill had 2. So all other things equal, I think they got the better player and got him for less money.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Um, we've addressed the offensive line, we've addressed defensive line. The one area that concerns me is the Bengals getting left out to dry, hung out to dry, if you will, at the cornerback position. And they're going to have to come up with something opposite Cheeto Awuzie to address that need. And Eli Apple was, I think it's fair to say, Jay, he was inconsistent this year. There were times where it looked like he had really caught on to Lou Anarumo's system and what they wanted to do on the back end of the defense. It looked like he was playing in synchronicity with everybody else. And the other times he looked like he was kind of out to lunch. So I'm a little bit concerned about that corner position. How do you think that shapes up?
Yeah, I'm waiting to see if, you know, Eli Apple basically was a street free agent. So did he do enough last year to make teams perk up and think, hey, we want to take a shot on this guy? I think he's going to be out there for the Bengals to bring back on a reasonable deal. And you wonder how much of that inconsistency led to them moving on from Steve Jackson, the cornerbacks coach. And maybe they feel the new guy they brought in, Chuck Burke, can get that consistency and can elevate Eli Apple, and they run it back and give him another shot to kind of prove himself. I know, they probably weren't happy with some of his antics on social media, and you can live with that if a guy's playing well. So I do expect them to try to bring him back. It's something reasonable, $3-4 million a year. And then, I don't know, he's better as your fourth cornerback than cornerback 2. I still think, especially now losing CJ Uzomah, that $7-6 million, whatever you projected to pay him, you can roll into a premium position like cornerback and maybe go out there. There's still some decent not better than decent cornerbacks out there. So they can make a play there. I get the feeling that everything right now is kind of on hold to see what happens with Lyle Collins on the offensive line, the tackle from Dallas, because it doesn't look like anybody's going to want to trade for him. Maybe at the last minute, a team that doesn't have the cap space to get into a bidding war ends up trading for him. But I think everybody, the Bengals included, are waiting for him to be released, and then the bidding begins, and then you kind of chart the rest of your path after you got him or not.
So how would that work, Jay? And we'll wrap it up with this, because I know you're a very busy guy and following all the free agent moves that are being made, not only with the Bengals, but around the NFL. How would that work with the cap if the Bengals were to acquire him through the trade? They pick up pretty much all of his money, correct?
Yeah, but it's the next 3 years it's basically 1 year, $10 million for each of the next 3 years. There's not a lot of dead money there. I don't believe, I have to go back and look, but it felt like it was the way that contract was structured last I looked at it, that you could get out, $10 million this year, and then minimal dead money to get out after that. But that is definitely it. The base salary, it doesn't climb. You see a lot of these contracts kind of climb as they get deeper in. And that's why you see a lot of these big money guys that are signing contracts today in 2022 are going to be the big cap cuts in 2024, because rarely do a lot of these teams take those contracts to fruition. The Bengals do. The Bengals more often than not will honor the length of a contract. And if it's not ascending rapidly, and if it's just 10 million a year for the next 3 years for a top 10 right tackle, why would you not take that? I think the biggest drawback is they don't want to give anything up. They don't have, the roster's not quite deep enough yet where they can afford to do a player deal for him, and they just value draft picks way too much. I can't, even if it's a 4th round pick, which it sounds like from reports that's all it would take to get Collins. That's been their honey hole. They've been so good in those middle rounds, and they're just, at this point, they're not willing to give up that pick because they feel they can be a player if he gets cut, and they can swoop in and just buy him.
I think that's a great point, Jay, is that they have made the most of the draft, that certainly the last 2 years under Duke Tobin and obviously Zach Taylor. They've done a great job of building, I think, not only starters, but depth along the roster. I don't know. I go back and forth as to whether or not they would, if they really value Collins that much, I think they might give up a 4th round pick for him. But that is, something I'm sure is debated inside the walls at Paul Brown Stadium.
It's like anything else. You start getting antsy. It sounds good on Tuesday, but you start getting close to the deadline on Wednesday, and you're like, so-and-so's out there, and they've got a little more money than we do now because they haven't signed anybody. And you're right, inside those walls, maybe they get a little more nervous and they decide to pull the trigger. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens, whether it's the Bengals or whoever it is, what happens with Lyle Collins.
All right. He is Jay Morrison. He does an amazing job along with Paul Dehner covering the Cincinnati Bengals for The Athletic. Follow Jay on Twitter at Jay Morrison, ATH, all one word. Jay, thanks for taking time out. I really appreciate it.
Great talking to you, Trags.
All right, Jay. That's Jay Morrison. I'm Mike Petralia, and this has been the Jungle Roar Podcast.